Hello, my fellow night owls. Welcome back to our series where we'll be slowly leveling up this absolute rat while I ramble about everything and anything, whatever just comes to my mind, whatever I want to talk about. So grab a drink, grab a snack, throw me on in the background while we talk about what it's like growing up gaming, why I feel like gaming's so popular, and how the stigma of gaming has changed throughout the years. So starting off, to give some background, I've been gaming since I was probably about 3 years old. I am 30 now, so that's about 27 years of gaming. I grew up with two older brothers. I grew up with a dad that had to work a lot and a mom who was sick. Due to that, there wasn't a lot of time for me to spend with my parents. So with three young boys, gaming was something that was super popular in our household. The first gaming console we had was actually a Super Nintendo mixed with a couple Game Boys. The very first game I actually played was Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo, and I still play it to this day. I tried speedrunning it, but I feel like there's some games if you speedrun it, you removed a lot of the fun out of it. And for me, playing it playing it suboptimally is kind of fun. Like I don't want to worry about if I'm doing something efficiently in one of my favorite games. So that's kind of how I got my gaming start. A lot of Mortal Kombat, and then we eventually got N64. I got really into like the standard Legend of Zeldas, the Super Smash Brothers, really into those super popular games. What do I do with this guy? Okay. What do you want me to do with you? Okay. Anyway. Uh so yeah, and then I slowly got into PC gaming. The first PC game I actually played was either Age of Empires or Warcraft 2. I got super into both. RTS was actually the first genre that I got truly addicted to. I played a absolute shit ton of Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, a lot of Age of Empires, Command and Conquer, a lot of those kind of games. That was kind of the thing I was really into, as well as the adventure games. I was never one to really get into shooters. Aside from Halo, that was the only one that really got me super interested. But other than that, I was never really into shooters. I've never had the greatest reaction time, and I found like a lot of the games like Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, there's the kind of games that reward reflexes and fast aim. Two things I'm actually very terrible at. I have terrible aim in those games, and I do not have fast reflexes whatsoever. So that kind of put me in a situation where every time I played them, I either had to accept that I was going to completely be terrible, or I had to play with people who were also terrible. Although the only Call of Duty game I actually got super good at was Advanced Warfare, because that one was a lot like Halo, where you had like jetpacks and stuff like that. So, but yeah, going back to early gaming, I got really into Doom, and then eventually, when I was a teenager, I was able to buy my own computer, and that was always a goal for me because growing up, I did play a lot of World of Warcraft, but like I said in the last video, a lot of it was down to sneaking into my brother's room at 5 in the morning before he woke up to play on his computer or trying to guess his password. I remember there'd be times where after school he'd go to work for like 6 hours and I would spend hours, pretty much the entire time, trying to guess his password. And back then, you could guess like 4 times, then it would put a lockout for an hour. And then I would come back in an hour and I'd guess again. And I ended up actually guessing it once. And that worked out for about a week until I made a mistake of searching something on Google. Not bad, but something he would never search. And then as soon as he opened Google, he saw that. And so he knew that I was on his computer, so he ended up changing the password. I ended up guessing it again. It was literally just the old password plus with a 1 at the end. But then he came home from work early, saw me on his computer, and that was that. Eventually, yeah, I got a really bad laptop, was able to play Wrath of the Lich King on that. Eventually got another computer. But I was always really into computer games and console games. I was never really one in console wars. I always found any sort of console war to be really cringe, honestly. Like anyone saying, oh, my console's better, my console's better. It's like, every single console has great games. I can look at PlayStation and I'm thinking Final Fantasy is my favorite series on PlayStation. I can look at Xbox and say, oh, Halo, that was the big one. I can look at PC and think Warcraft or StarCraft or World, like all these different games that I got super into. So I don't think gatekeeping or like tearing down other people's interests is really indicative of a good gamer in general. Like if you only have one console, you don't have to like mindlessly defend it. Like I have every console, and I think every console has advantages. I have a Wii, I have well, I have Nintendo, I have Sony, I have Microsoft, I have all these different things. And I just don't think it's appropriate to shit on somebody else's interest, because that's all you're really doing when you're like saying, "Oh, your console sucks." Basically, you're just saying your personal preference of video games sucks, and saying someone's opinion is wrong is kind of cringe in my eyes. But so yeah, I was never super into the whole console wars. I had my preferences, but I could realize that they were all good. And then, yeah, so at this point, going out of high school, I'd been gaming for about 15 years at this point, and around this time was the first time I actually had full freedom. I was able to buy any game I wanted. I was able to buy consoles. I was able to do all this stuff, whereas before, I either had to ask for permission to play or ask my parents to buy me a game, but that kind of went away after a while, which is, I think everybody's had that experience, and that's super fun whenever that happens, because you kind of get that adult money where you can kind of, if you want to play a game, you get to play that game. You don't have to ask your parents to throw a monthly subscription on. I know I played RuneScape way back in the day, and I know all I wanted was the members option. That's all I wanted. But my mom took one look at RuneScape, and for anyone that's ever played RuneScape, you can't even blame my mom for this one. She took one look at RuneScape, legit glanced over, turned away, and said, "Fuck no, that's a virus." She did not believe that was a legit game whatsoever, and I don't blame her for that. So about 2 years of playing RuneScape without being able to have a membership, 12-year-old me thought it was a good idea to go in my mom's purse, grab her debit card, and get a subscription for myself. Well, that worked out for about 2 months until she got her bill back, and she had no idea what Jagex was. And she's like, "Is that fucking virus?" So yeah, I didn't get to play much RuneScape Members Edition. I did a lot of the free stuff, unfortunately. But, so I am very in-depth in the MMO genre and that kind of stuff. I've played a lot of them between RuneScape, World of Warcraft. I've played Rift was one I played for a long time. I got really into Rift, actually, for anyone that remembers that one. I think it's still going. But it's always something I've liked. I've always liked the adventure. I've liked the RPG. I've always liked anything involving strategy where it's a good balance of casual play and hardcore play, where you can play casually, but you can also play super hardcore, and that's why I got into StarCraft 2 so much. Like, StarCraft 2 is a game I've probably played the most of in my life, right next to World of Warcraft. I've probably played upwards of like 80,000 games of StarCraft 2, and that's another game where it's like, yeah, there's a lot to do if you're not super into the 1v1, but if you are into the 1v1, there's, like, that's kind of what the game was made for originally, so you do have a lot of the opportunity to do that there. But I think what changed a lot in my mindset when it came to gaming was as I got older, and I see how the perception of gaming has changed over the years. For example, when I was in high school, if you even mentioned that you played video games, you would get absolutely relentlessly bullied. Unless it was Call of Duty. That was really the only game that people didn't bully you for playing. But now, I'm sitting here, and gaming has become so mainstream at this point where nobody cares if you play video games. Not a single person cares. People will be super interested. They'll want to know what you're playing. They'll want to know how you're playing. Whereas when I was in high school, when I was a kid, you weren't allowed to do that. You weren't allowed to talk about how you played video games. You weren't allowed to talk about any of these interests, and it was always super taboo. And it's weird how much it's changed, and I wish that when I was around that age that it would have been like that for me. I feel like I would have been a lot more confident when I was younger, because with how into gaming I felt very secluded. I felt very not a part of things, because you don't even know who else played video games, right? Because if everyone's holding it close to the chest, and you don't know who's all playing, so it can be very lonely at times, and I feel like that never really goes away. I know as mainstream as it is now, I know a lot of people are still, especially people my age, are very cautious about talking about that kind of stuff, because we do in the back of our minds have that idea that everybody hates it and wants to bully you for it, but I don't really think that's the case anymore. But yeah, that kind of leads into my point of, as you get older, I think what happens is a lot of people just stop caring what other people think about their hobbies, and that's definitely happened to me. Like, I'll openly say I play games, I don't really care. If I'm not, like, attached to somebody or doing any of that kind of stuff, I don't really care what they think about my hobbies. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's one of the underrated best parts about growing up, is you kind of just stop caring about other people's opinions on what your interests are. For me, I work hard enough in life and I do all that kind of stuff where I don't want to, I, like, I don't want to waste my time worrying about what other people think. If people don't like my hobbies, okay, that's not going to change anything. I work hard enough where I want to enjoy my life the way I want to enjoy it, and I don't want to be kind of handicapped and held back by what other people think. So as I got older, around the 25 mark, it definitely started setting in. I know I've talked to some of my friends about this too, and there's always that question of when's the expiration date on gaming? When is an acceptable time to still play video games? When is it an acceptable time to stop? But I've slowly come to the opinion that I don't think there is an acceptable time. You know, I think everybody in life has their hobbies. People have their ways they like to wind down. Like, there are some people that just want to go home, chill with their dog, and watch some Netflix, and that's totally fine. And I don't think if somebody wants to go home and play video games for 8 hours, if they have all their other stuff figured out, I don't think that's a huge problem, because there are people that spend the exact same amount of time doing other stuff, so how's gaming any different? I think gaming might even be a better one, because depending on what you do, it's a very social experience, right? Like, you get to you get to talk to other people, you get to experience new things, and, like, I've always said that video games, if done right, are definitely a form of art, so it's like, you're not just sitting there watching something or like mindlessly scrolling, you're experiencing work that people have put tens of thousands of hours into, and I think that's something that draws me in. Like, in general, I've always been a huge fan of any sort of content and any sort of media where you could definitely tell that people put the love and care into it. I don't like super low effort stuff. Like, I have another YouTube channel where I put more effort into stuff, but here this YouTube channel is mainly just for me being able to sit back and talk about the things that maybe I don't either have people to talk to about it with, people aren't super interested hearing, or I just need to get something off my chest, and rather than try to talk to somebody about it, I can sit back, play some games, and just rant in a way that maybe somebody else can relate, maybe someone can understand what I'm getting at, and maybe somebody else is maybe feeling the same way or going through the same thing, they just can't put into words, or they want to feel like somebody else is experiencing the same thing as them and they're not alone in this. Okay. Oh god, that was terrible. Okay. Gotta kill some catapults here. But no, I'm just super glad that the perception of gaming has changed. I feel like it's something that brings a lot of people together, but I do feel like gaming addiction is definitely something that is real. I think it's something that people fall into when they want to escape the stress of the real world. When you can enter an RPG, when you can enter all these games, and you don't want, and you kind of forget about a lot of your life problems until you log off. But I think that's a slippery slope where it is dangerous, right? Because you don't really have that sense of time a lot of the times. Like, people will sit down and they might game for like 8 hours, but to them it only feels like a couple hours, and there's a lot of stuff they had to do, but now they're way behind on it all, and it's a slippery slope. So my biggest advice would kind of just be like, always be mindful of what you're doing, and like kind of force yourself to get all your other stuff done before you do anything else. Because I definitely fell into that trap a lot too, where I would literally game for 8 hours straight, and I wouldn't even know what time it was, and then all of a sudden I look down, it's been 8 hours, and I had got nothing done, and now I'm rushing to get stuff done, or I'm not getting stuff done because I have to go to sleep, or I'm not sleeping because I have to get all my other stuff done. It's definitely something that I think is very common as the generations go on. It is an issue. I think that needs to be addressed. I think it needs to be taken more seriously, because it might not be your standard chemical addiction compared to something like drugs and alcohol, but it's definitely an addiction that needs to be taken more seriously. And there are, I think especially now in modern age with all the social media and all the instant dopamine cravings, I feel like gaming fills that niche so incredibly well. Like, I know ADHD, I have it, a lot of people have it. A big thing for a lot of ADHD people, and those that haven't might relate, when it comes to like doing tasks, if we come across something that's something we've done 100 times. It's not exciting. It's not challenging. It doesn't have to get done. Those 4 criteria, if it doesn't match any of those, then we just don't care. Like, you look at something like, oh, I gotta mop the floor. Is it exciting? No. Is it new? No. Is it challenging? No. Does it have to get done? Not really. All right, then I have no interest in doing it. But then let's say you have you have a bunch of family coming over, then you're like, oh my god, now I have to get it done. That's when it'll get done. But then you look at something like gaming, and I could look at something like mythic raiding, like I talked about in my last video. Is that new and exciting? Yes. Is it challenging? Yes. Does it have to get done? Maybe not traditionally, but I have a guild that relies on me. Does it fit all this criteria? Yes. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people underestimate about gaming, is it does fill a lot of those needs that a lot of ADHD people have. So I'm glad it's becoming more mainstream, and I do think that there isn't an age limit on it. I feel like, especially now, you have a lot of big streamers that are older. Like, you have people like WoW Grandma. She's like elderly, and she's doing great. She's enjoying video games, and nobody's giving her flack for that. I think people that will get the most flack for gaming are 20 to 40-year-olds. I think that's the biggest time area where people don't want to see you gaming. But I think once you hit a certain point, I don't think anybody will care anymore. And the choice of it is, I don't think most adults will care either. Oh my god, I love the rocket boots. So yeah, I'm just super glad about all that stuff. And there's definitely been self-doubts in me where I've thought, am I at where I want to be in life, and where would I be without gaming? But then there's the flip side where I'm also could be thinking, would I still be, would that change anything really? Like, maybe I'd just be doing something else. But it's definitely something I want to get more of control over. Like, I don't want to be gaming 24/7 anymore. It's not really something I strive to do, and I feel like I'm at the point now where I do kind of want to dial it back a bit. That's a big reason why I wanted to stop mythic raiding, is because there's other things I want to do in life. There's people I want to see. I want to date people. I want to, you know, start building a family, doing all those kind of things, and I can't really do that while dedicating to mythic raiding at the time. Like, I know there's people that do it. I know I know it's super accessible. Oh my god. Yeah, so I know it's super viable. It's just, I think it's more viable once you already have your situation figured out than trying to start with a rating and then get into building relationships. Because once you have the relationships built, you kind of put in a lot more of the effort up front. Whereas if I'm raiding 3 times a week and I'm trying to build a relationship and it's like, hey, can we do something tonight? It's like, no, I got to raid for 3.5 hours 3 times a week plus all my mythic dungeons. Like, your success chance of building a relationship just goes through the dirt at that point. Whereas if you're already in a relationship, you're already married, stuff like that, and then you try to put it in, I feel like it'd be a lot easier to accommodate, because I don't feel like there'd be that giant time constraints, and the other person wouldn't feel like you're prioritizing one thing over them. Whereas if you're already in a relationship, they'll probably know that you care about them, and you just kind of need that way to unwind. And I do feel like, especially in today's age where mental health is such a big issue, gaming definitely does help a lot. As toxic as it can be, I feel like if people don't have that release and that opportunity to get away from the stresses of society, I feel like things would be a lot worse. And we saw that during COVID, right? With when everything was shut down, there was a lot of issues going on in the world, which I believe might have happened regardless. But we saw, especially like with sports going down, I think society in general needs a distraction. I don't think it's viable for us to not have those kind of distractions. I am getting juiced by these ogres. So I think that's the most important thing that gaming brings. I think it brings levity to people's lives. I think it brings something that they can use to escape their daily life, and that's why it is hard for some people. I know there's been feedback on the new War Within cinematic with Anduin having his PTSD, and I know there's people that aren't a huge fan of it because they don't want these real-life problems invading their video games. But I think you need that. I don't think it's healthy for video games to completely 100% ignore reality. And I think in terms of really good writing, I feel good storytelling has to reflect real life. I feel like you need to be able to relate to characters on certain topics. Like when Anduin was having his breakdown there, I think back to where am I going? I think back to times where I maybe had made mistakes and done regrettable things, and it was more relatable, and that's why I liked it. I have no AoE for this. So I do think that while, yes, gaming is something that you should be able to just turn your brain off, escape reality, I feel like it's foolish to think that gaming should only include RPG elements and not some real life stuff. I feel like there are games you could play that don't include that. Maybe, I think MMORPGs or RPGs in general are always going to touch on those tough topics. Like maybe somebody's had a death in the family recently. Well, you can't expect RPGs to not have death in them, right? So you're always going to be reminded about these things. So I feel like game selection is super important in that case, because you have to pick a game that you're okay with playing. Like there are games that maybe some people with the experiences they had in life, it's not a good fit for them to play those games, but there's always going to be games for somebody, and that's what I truly love about gaming is no matter what somebody's interested in, whether somebody says they don't like games or not, I truly believe there is something that anybody would enjoy. Is this the last dude? It is the last dude. But yeah, that was just kind of what I've been thinking about, the kind of pressures of society of not of getting a lot of different things done and not gaming, and what I know there's still that separation. A lot of people still think gaming is completely useless and everyone that does it is lazy and has no ambition. But I don't think that's true. I think people are more open with what they like, and they don't really care what other people think. I know there was a Reddit comment where, you know, somebody was asking, it's like, what's the perks of getting older? And somebody even mentions, like, not worrying about what other people think about my hobbies. And I made a reply comment saying that, yeah, no, it's nice. Like, before I used to hide the fact that I used to play video games, now it's just, like, a part of my personality. And somebody else replied being like, dude, aren't you worried? Like, nobody's gonna think you're cool. And pretty much every reply to that dude's comment was like, I don't think you're past the age of 18 at all. And yeah, he replied he was like 16 or something. It's like, don't worry, dude. Eventually you'll get to a point where you don't care what other people think of your hobbies. Like, unless you're like a super important person to me, I do not care what you think about my hobbies. I will enjoy my hobbies. I'll keep doing them. Don't worry. And I'll be here to make midnight videos, so you guys always have something to hang out to. But that's going to be the end of today's video. I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone for making it this far. Be sure to like, throw a comment down below of your experiences with this situation, and throw out a subscription. I know this video is a little bit further than the last one, but I do want to at least make this like a bi-weekly thing. Huge thank you to everyone. Godspeed. Stay safe.